Good morning, everyone. Today, we are going to present a macroeconomic analysis of Colombia. Our team members are Areline Méndez, Cristian Emmanuel Natera, Juan Camilo Ortiz, and Catherine Enriquez. Our project is structured as follows: Introduction, background and history, general definitions, data collection, explanation behind values, conclusion and self-reflection, and references. One of the most important concepts in macroeconomics is the gross domestic product, GDP, because it measures the performance of a country's economy. In 2019, the service sector contributed about 57.53% to Colombia's GDP. The share of industry and agriculture was 26.27% and 6.74% respectively. The main topics we are going to discuss in our today's presentation are the following. First, reasons behind the behavior of Colombia's GDP from 2017 to 2020, taking into consideration the background history. Second, the Colombian banking system and its relation with GDP.
Now, it is fundamental to have a context about the Republic of Colombia. Therefore, we are going to discuss about the background and the history of Colombia. The history of Colombia has several relevant, magnificent, and terrible factors. That are the reason why I'm going to introduce some of these crucial moments of the country. First, it achieved its independence from the Spanish Empire in 1810. Then, one of the most violent conflict happened. It is called the Bogotazo. It claimed the life of at least 180,000 Colombians. After that, the M19 guerrilla attacked the Supreme Court of Colombia. It was necessary to use a tank and put it into in the front of the palace door to defend the site. In addition, all that happened in a period when the country suffered a systematic armed conflict and political violence in a period called the violence. There was an armed conflict between government, guerrilla, paramilitaries, and drug traffickers. One of the most famous celebrities of that armed conflict is called Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria. Nowadays, Colombia has a rural improvement around all the country in the economy, security, and culture in recent years. In 2017, the government of Colombia signed the bilateral cessation of violence, and over 50,000 fighters of the Colombian guerrilla had laid down their arms and rejoined to civilian life. In 2018, in the country were civilizations, days of employment, protests, and real of demand for more government resources invested in education. A new president started his period. His name is Iván Duque. In 2019, in this year, a significant number of Venezuelans illegally immigrants come to Bogota because of their crisis in the country, and it produced a lot of changes in the economy in the economy of Colombia. In 2020, pandemic changed the country economy and its population. Because of that, the country was in quarantine almost all the year. Therefore, people couldn't go out, their homes, stores were closed, and all the economy got stuck.
GDP variables and importance. GDP is the gross domestic product. It's an indicator of a country's wealth. It's the value of goods and services produced in a country during a determined time, usually 1 year. GDP does not include topics such as environmental health, production not quantified in the market, the black market, level of inequality in the society, and technology or products available. It is important to be aware of GDP, since it's the way the government measures and defines the economic policies. GDP growth means it's a positive GDP. It's when the country is going through a good path. If there are problems, economical problems in a country, then GDP might decrease and it will be negative. There are two types of GDP, real and nominal. Real GDP is the value of goods or services adjusted to the inflation rate. Nominal GDP measures the prices in the current year or base year selected. The most often used is the real GDP, since it provides information without the changes made due to inflation. According to the Bank of Canada, they state that inflation is a persistent rise in the average level of prices over time. It is when the currency value drops and the prices of products therefore increase. If money is not invested or deposited in accounts where interest are gained, the person is losing money since its real value will be less every year. The inflation rate is calculated by the change of prices in the CPI. Inflation also contributes to maintain the value of products and avoid deflation. Unemployment is another macroeconomic factor as GDP. Unemployment is the percentage of unemployed people in a given area. There are three types: cyclic, which occurs during a recession; structured, which is when the people's skills do not match the needs; and frictional unemployment. This is a temporary status when people move from one job to another. Interest rate is the money that is charged to people when they are asking for a loan. It is important to be aware of the interest rate since whenever asking for a loan, if the interest is high, it means the payments will be higher. When the interest is low, the person asking for a loan will be paying less. And if the interest payments are already fixed, that means even if the following years the interest rate increases, the person that requested the loan will not be affected, since they will keep their low interest.
In the table shown below, you could be seeing the values of the GDP per capita, the GDP growth percent, the inflation, the unemployment, and the policy interest rates from 2017 to 2020. In addition, the following graphs, 1 to 5, provide a visual representation of the indicated values. Such information is crucial when analyzing the economic situation of any country and deliver key data of the overall status. In recent years, numerous health, socioeconomic, and political events have impacted directly this nation, making its GDP rise steadily and fall in a considerable manner. In order to deal with these conflicts, the banking system of Colombia, ruled by the Ministry of Finance and Public Credit in collaboration with the Central Bank of Colombia, evaluates, defines, and executes the fiscal and monetary policy of the country. This not only with the objective of protect the nation's economic welfare, but to foster it. In the beginnings of 2017, a change in the fiscal policy derived in a rise in the added tax value from 16% to 19%. This triggered a downward and a subsequent disturb in the inflation rate in the years 2018 and 2019 due to the instability and uncertainty in the political instance of the nation. In 2020, the world economy experienced a shrink due to the pandemic, where commerce reduced and almost stopped in many sectors. To deal with such situation, the executive power interfered by regulating the prices in the market, taking in consideration the high unemployment rate that equally negatively collaborated with the circumstance due to the massive loss of jobs. It is worthy to highlight that this latter fact, despite being historically elevated, experienced an increase of 63% compared to the average of the previous 3 years to a total of 16.08%. The present situation delivered in a downfall of the GDP as shown in the graph 1, which until that moment has experienced a constant annual growth of 2.4% in average for the 2017 to 2019 period. Until 2017, the monetary policy was characterized by a constant upward in the policy interest rate, destined to reduce the amount of money circulating. In 2018, the change of government led by Ivan Duque introduced an adjustment in this policy with the help of his government cabinet. Such regulation was focused in decreasing the interest rate in order to motivate the population to invest in new assets and increase their purchase power. This setting was ardently supported by the decrease in the inflation rate. Since then on, the interest rate has been steadily falling from an average of 4.35% in 2018 to 2.87% in 2020. Such a measure to contrast the effect of the current pandemic, COVID-19, in the nation's well-being.
In this moment, I'm going to explain the reason behind the growth decline of the variables that we mentioned before. As I said, in this last year, the country has a huge improvement in its economy. In 2017, the end of the more than 50 years long civil war is a huge step for the country. However, changing taxes, inflation, GDP, and social non-conformity is something that the country has to improve. In 2018, due to the social pressure, changes were made in the country policy that improved the situation in education specifically. However, protests left many people out of work and the president decreased the economy interest rate. So now in that year there is a more unemployment than the year before. In 2019, Venezuelan illegal immigrants increased the unemployment rate due they offer unskilled labor cheaper than Colombia. The protests continue and the unemployment rate increased. In 2020, COVID-19 made a catastrophe in the country. The country was in quarantine almost all the year. Therefore, there was a massive lack of jobs. There was no help for the government. The policy interest rate decreased. Many people had many needs in this year. So this year was very difficult for Colombians.
According to the table, Colombia reports a higher unemployment rate when compared to countries with lower GDP growth rates. For instance, Peru reported a GDP growth rate of 2.2% in 2019. We can observe that the Colombian economy reported a growth rate of 3.3%. So we can say that the Colombian economy grows faster. However, Peru reported a 3.31% unemployment rate, which is significantly lower than the 9.71% reported by Colombia. Finally, as a conclusion, we can state that the COVID-19 pandemic affected Colombia's economy as it did in most countries. As a result of this crisis, GDP fell, unemployment rose, income rate dropped, and interest rate decreased. Colombia is a strong economy in Latin America measured by its GDP growth. It is also a country characterized by high inequality index. Colombia is one of the Latin American countries with the worst income distribution. In 2019, approximately 56% of the income generated was held by the wealthiest 20% of its population. The direction of the economic policy, both fiscal and monetary, adopted by the government and the Central Bank of Colombia is fundamental. Despite the current economic crisis, this nation is recovering and shows signs of a brighter future. Thank you so much.